Hello everyone in this world. We are today we are a group who's will present this 13 meeting presentation because tonight we are going to present the difference which is the difference between seminar papers and seminar presentation. We are I am Danardono Sasongojati and the girl you fail is Elmawati and the last my friend is Cecilia Vikanti Lim. Okay, so I'm gonna start the presentation. Okay, by the next slide. Okay, in this part, I'm going to present the material is what is the purpose of seminar papers. Okay, the purpose of seminar papers is a short piece of writing, usually 1 until 2 pages in length concerning an aspect of given text. A seminar paper intertext specific example and evidence. A seminar paper needs to have an extremely focused thesis. You must be able to thoroughly discuss your point. The seminar paper can be both broadly exploratory and yet it needs to cleave into the work and do some deep analysis. A successful paper will lead into more complex essays and analysis on past themes. The seminar paper is often used as a discussion piece for seminar, but it also can be vehicles to explore recurring themes that relate to your overall educational goals. Each faculty member will have his or her own specific expectation for the seminar paper. And after this, I will present the explain of the structure of the seminar paper. Traditionally, a seminar term paper will consist of four major sections. Number one is introduction, number two is background, number three is analysis, number four is conclusion. This section contains a brief outline to follow, but each subsection is examined in detail in the subsequent pages. And the traditional seminar or term paper structure, there is a number one is introduction. Set out crux of the paper, introduce and note why the topic is important, briefly summarize necessary background information, states our thesis, confine our organization of the paper, like EA or roadmap, tell audience what your paper will show and in what order if you concisely summarize your research and outline the arguments of your paper. The also summarize your research and outline the arguments of your paper, then also your audience will be able to follow your analysis. And number two is a background like that I've said, and this part is I'm going to explain more detail about the background on the audience. Number one is like describe the genesis of the subjects and describe these changes that have occurred during its development. Explain the reason for the change. Describe where things are now. You may also want to indicate the reason for further change. And three is analysis. Explain the thesis. Large-scale organization discuss the major issues, spread issues and sub-issues or issues logically. Small-scale organization introduce and conclude on its issue. Present your argument and rebut opposing arguments. Use organizational paradigm where appropriate. And first, the conclusion restates the thesis of the paper, summarize major points. If you choose to use hypothetical in your introduction, revisit the hypothetical to tie up your paper. And after that, in this slide, I'm going to explain some ideas and questions to think about while preparing to write seminar papers. There are what is author test agenda? How does the text connect with program themes? What support for their thesis draws you in the most and why? How is evidence from other texts related? Discuss further implications of the author's evidence. How can you test out the author's thesis if it's true? Then what else should be true? What are some other ways to explain the author's point using your own examples? Discussing motives or basis of the author and how they influence his or her conclusions, and relate author's nations or evidence to personal experience. Explores argument or point that are unclear, difficult. Does the author acknowledge and refute other arguments? How well is there sufficient evidence to support the author's argument? What else should be authors have provided? What meaning or impact does this text evidence have on its intended readers? How do the ideas of this text play out in your life and your times? And the next slides, this part, I'm gonna explain you guys about what should authors and students do. The first part I will explain what students do are like a fix specific topic in according with your supervisor, get a first overview of the existing literature. Literature review is one of the important part of their work for a seminar paper. Generally, this is in their own responsibility, and they may get hints from the supervisor, like specifically the structure in accordance with the supervisor. And in the next slide, I'm going to explain what tutors do. Like challenges the student to assume the student assume the role of expert and to take a stance on the topic that they will use legal analysis support rather than simply reporting on what others have said. And there's incorporating discussions of the writing process into the seminar. It's a incorporating discourse is a itself allowing time in class to lay the foundation for students to understand the expectation during each step and to discuss the student questions and concerns about their work on that step of the process. And there are setting deadlines that require students to start early and to work on the papers at a steady pace, while the same time allowing enough time for each stage in the writing process. And the last is intervening in students' writing process as often as possible to provide feedback and guidance about the students' progress thus far. And I think that's all I have to explain in my part. And in the next part will be explained by my friends. She is Cecilia Fikotilim. Be pleasure that you can explain.
Okay, thanks, Danar. Okay, so Dana has explained about seminar paper, and now I would like to tell you about seminar presentation. So guys, have you ever heard about seminar presentation? Or have you ever attended a seminar presentation? Or maybe you have ever be a speaker in a seminar presentation. Okay, so what is a seminar presentation? Okay, so as you see on the screen, a seminar presentation is a short informal talk giving the result of your researches into a topic on the course. So in the seminar presentation, you will sharing your ideas or discoveries in a way that gives seminar participants an opportunity to discuss the material that you convey. So there will be a time for discussion. So the audience can ask you some question regarding your material and you will answer them. Okay, so now we will dig deeper into the things that are usually noticed during a seminar presentation. The next slide, please. Okay, so the next one is timing the presentation. Well, if you want to become a speaker in seminar presentation, you should consider about the timing. So in seminar presentation, you may have to speak for 15 until 20 minutes. Okay, and in the end of your presentation, there will be a discussion time. Because it's difficult to get the timing right if people interrupt you in the middle of your presentation, that's why the discussion time in the end of your presentation. So you will, if you have given 20 minutes including question, you should decide how much time you want to allow for discussion. Perhaps 5 or even 10 minutes at the end of your presentation. So you will answer your audience question enjoyable, and the audience can feel enjoy to ask you a question. Okay, the next slide, please. So the next one that we notice in seminar presentation is notes. Well, if you want to become a speaker in a seminar presentation, you should take notes because notes are important in presentation to help you to remember what you want to say to your audience. Well, the purpose of notes isn't to tell you what to say. You need to know that already because you have to practice, so you can familiar with your material and you can copy the material well. So however, nerves can have odd effects in the stage when you perform your presentation, and under the stress of the presentation you might forget what you had prepared, and notes are then prompts to support you. It isn't just one you want to say, it's the order in which you want to make your point. Okay, so we recommend you to use file cards rather than A4 paper for your notes because A4 paper is too big. It can make your audience distract about what your explanation of them. So how much you choose to write on each card will depend partly on your familiarity with the subject and partly on your nerves. But we suggest that you write on every other line and leave a margin for additional comments. You should try to make your writing slightly larger than usual, and of course, see it's clear and legible. Okay, the next slide, please. So the next one, we usually find it in a seminar presentation. That is visual aids. We usually find the speaker using visual aids when their presentation because visual aids are generally considered to be an essential part of a formal presentation. But a very short seminar presentation may take place without visual material. Well, if you have a choice, remember that visual aids are support for the speaker as well the audience. You can easily remember what's the order for the next point that you should convey to your audience, and then your audience can easily understand your material because they see on the screen about your material. You can use diagram, videos, or a picture that related with your material. So it can help you as well as the audience. If you use a summary slide at the end, you will again be helped to remember the point you need to make as you conclude. So that's all about seminar presentation. So the next slide will be presented by Elma.
Okay, thank you, Cecil. The explain about who the Danar and the Cecil. I will explain about the differences between seminar papers and seminar presentation. Okay, the seminar paper is short pitch of writing, usually 1 to page in the length, concerning an aspect of a given text. And the seminar paper interprets specific sample and it evidence. A seminar paper needs to have the extremely focused thesis. You must be able to thoroughly discuss your point. And then the seminar paper can be both broadly exploratory, and yet it needs to cleave into the work and some deep analysis. A successful paper, we it into more example, essay, and analysis on class themes. The seminar paper is often used a discussion pitch for seminar, but it also can be a facial the explore requiring them to relate to your overall educational goals. Okay, and then the each faculty member will have his or her own specific expectation for the seminar paper. And the seminar presentation is a short informal talk giving the result of your researchers into the topic on the course. You are sharing your ideas or discoveries in a way that give a seminar presentation an opportunity for discussion. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, guys, so that is all about our presentation, explanation, Danar and Cecil. In conclusion, seminar paper needs script in front of you, and for the most part you will be reading. You will be assessed on your material and the planning and thinking that have gone into preparation. And next the your lecture might collect a copy of your paper for marking purpose. If you often ISOR ask whether and the written form is be marked or not. If you make a seminar presentation, the way in which you present will be assessed as always the what you say, and the occasion is likely to be more formal. If you're studying a scientific or technical subject, you may have to give a presentation which is very formal. You are likely to be part of a group. Okay, the finally, and that bring us to the end. So to close the next slide, please. Okay, so to close, I would like to say thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you so much. See you next time to be our presentation. Bye.